Imagine standing in a crowd of thousands, watching the ground beneath your neighbor's feet suddenly split apart. And then in horror, you see him, his wife, his children, and everything he owns swallowed alive into the earth. That's not a scene from a movie. That's exactly what happened in the wilderness during Israel's journey from Egypt to the Promised Land. It was one of the most terrifying events recorded in the Bible. The rebellion of Korah, a man who thought he could challenge God's chosen leaders. But this isn't just an old story of judgment. It's a warning for us today about pride, jealousy, leadership, and the danger of resisting God's authority. Let's walk through this dramatic account together and uncover what it truly means for you and me. The Israelites had been delivered from Egypt with mighty signs and wonders. They had crossed the Red Sea on dry ground. They had seen Pharaoh's army destroyed. Every morning, bread called manna fell from heaven to feed them. And yet, despite God's miracles, the people were restless and often ungrateful. By the time we reached Numbers 16, they were camped in the wilderness, still on their long journey to the Promised Land. Tensions were high, complaints were constant, people were frustrated with Moses and Aaron, the brothers God had chosen to lead. And in the middle of this atmosphere of dissatisfaction, a man named Korah stepped forward. Korah wasn't just anybody, he was a Levite, from the tribe set apart for service in the tabernacle. The Levites had been given a sacred role, caring for the tabernacle, handling holy things, assisting the priests. But here's the problem. Korah wanted more. He wasn't satisfied with his honorable position. He wanted the priesthood itself. He wanted authority. He wanted recognition. Alongside him were two other men, Dathan and Abiram from the tribe of Reuben, and with them, 250 prominent community leaders, men of influence, men respected among the Israelites. This was no small rebellion. It was an organized movement of jealousy and ambition. One day they came as a group and stood against Moses and Aaron. Their accusation was bold. "You have gone too far. The whole community is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is with them. Why then do you set yourselves above the Lord's assembly?" At first this sounds noble. After all, doesn't God say his people are holy? But underneath was pride and deception. What they really meant was, why should you have more authority than we do? We're just as good as you. This wasn't a question of equality. It was rebellion against God's order. When Moses heard this, he didn't fight back. He didn't try to defend himself with words. Instead, he fell face down before God. That's a powerful lesson already. True spiritual leaders don't respond to rebellion with pride. They respond with humility. Then Moses proposed a test. He said, "Tomorrow morning the Lord will show who belongs to him and who is holy. You, Korah, and all your followers must take censers, put fire and incense in them, and present them before the Lord. The man the Lord chooses will be the one who is holy." This was no small challenge. Offering incense was the duty of priests. By taking this step, Korah and his men were crossing a line that God had clearly drawn. Moses also warned Korah directly. He reminded him of the great privilege he already had as a Levite. "Isn't it enough for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the rest of the Israelite community and brought you near himself to do the work at the Lord's tabernacle? Now you are trying to get the priesthood too. In other words, Korah, you're already chosen and honored. Why isn't that enough? Why do you want more than God has given you?" But Korah's heart was hardened. Jealousy had taken root too deeply. The next day came. Korah gathered his followers, and the 250 men brought their censers filled with incense and stood at the entrance of the tabernacle. It was a moment of tension. Thousands of Israelites stood watching. On one side, Moses, Aaron, and those who submitted to God's order. On the other side, Korah, his allies, and 250 leaders standing in defiance. Suddenly, the glory of the Lord appeared before the entire assembly. God's anger burned, and he spoke to Moses and Aaron. "Separate yourselves from this assembly so I can put an end to them at once." God was ready to destroy them all. But again, Moses and Aaron fell face down and cried out, "Oh God, will you be angry with the entire assembly when only one man sins?" This is the heart of godly leadership, pleading for mercy even for those who oppose you. Then the Lord instructed Moses to warn the people, "Move away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram." Moses walked to their tents with the elders following. He cried out, Move back from the tents of these wicked men. Do not touch anything belonging to them, or you will be swept away because of their sins." The people hurried away, but Korah, Dathan, and Abiram stood defiantly at the entrances of their tents, their wives and children beside them, as if daring God to act. Then Moses declared a prophetic sign: "If these men die a natural death, or if they suffer the fate of all mankind, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates something new, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them with everything that belongs to them, then you will know that these men have treated the Lord with contempt." The words had barely left his lips when the ground beneath them split open. The earth swallowed them whole, the men, their families, their possessions. They went down alive into the grave, and the earth closed over them. The entire camp fled in terror, shouting, "The earth is swallowing them!" But it didn't stop there. Fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men offering incense. God then commanded Eleazar, the son of Aaron, to collect the bronze censers of the 250 men and hammer them into sheets to overlay the altar. This was to be a permanent reminder to Israel that no one, except a descendant of Aaron, should come to burn incense before the Lord. It was a warning against anyone who might try to take authority that God had not given. But here's the shocking part. The very next day, the Israelites came to Moses and Aaron and said, "You have killed the Lord's people." Can you imagine? They had just witnessed God's judgment with their own eyes. The earth splitting, the fire consuming, and still they blamed Moses. God's anger burned again, and a plague broke out among the people. Moses told Aaron, "Take your censer, put incense in it, and hurry to the assembly to make atonement for them." Aaron ran into the midst of the people, and as the plague was sweeping through, he stood between the living and the dead. Because of his intercession, the plague was stopped. But even then, over 14,000 people died. The story of Korah is dramatic, but it's also deeply relevant. Here are some lessons we can't ignore. Pride and discontent are deadly. Korah wasn't content with the role God gave him. Pride led to jealousy, jealousy to rebellion, and rebellion to destruction. Not all leadership challenges are godly. Some people disguise rebellion as a call for equality or fairness, but at its root, it may be envy. God's order matters. He establishes authority in the church and in our lives. Rejecting it is ultimately rejecting Him. Humility is the mark of a true leader. Moses didn't fight back in anger. He humbled himself before God and prayed for his enemies. Sin spreads quickly. Korah influenced 250 leaders and even the entire nation. Be careful who you follow. God's judgment is real. Sometimes it's swift, sometimes delayed, but it always comes. Christ is our ultimate intercessor. Just as Aaron stood between the living and the dead, Jesus stands between us and the judgment we deserve. The rebellion of Korah reminds us that God takes His holiness seriously. Pride may seem small at first, but it can lead to ruin if left unchecked. So let me ask you, are you content with the role God has given you, or are you constantly comparing yourself to others? Are you walking in humility, or is pride pushing you to overstep God's boundaries? Are you following leaders who submit to God, or are you listening to voices of rebellion? Korah's story ended in tragedy, but yours doesn't have to. Choose humility, choose obedience, choose to stand on God's side, because when pride challenges God's authority, the end is always destruction, but when humility bows to God's authority, the result is always blessing. If this story opened your eyes, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more biblical insights. And let me know in the comments. What warning do you personally take from the story of Korah?